At her own birthday bash, my fiancée, Sophia, made a shocking announcement that she was planning to marry another guy. The guests shared uneasy looks and glanced at me with sympathy. Out of nowhere, I started clapping and handed her a ring as a gesture of goodwill. I wished her a long, happy marriage and hoped she'd have many kids. I removed the ring from my finger and held it out, but nobody took it. Sophia grabbed the edge of her dress, shooting me a resentful glare. The guy next to her smirked as he draped his arm around her. I sighed and placed the ring on a nearby table before casually pulling Mia over. Mia had been trailing behind Sophia and me since we were kids. She looked at me, puzzled, and asked, "What's up, Ethan?" I teased, "Have you been hitting the drinks?" She shook her head. "Nah, not at all." I tossed her my car keys. "I've had way too much. Drive me home." Sure thing. Just a few steps later, Sophia hurried over and grabbed my arm. "Ethan, what's this about?" I massaged my temples and explained. "Yesterday was a mess. We had an unexpected situation and ended up working all night at the office. After the morning meeting, I had to go to the next city. I only got back this afternoon and then went to pick up your gift. I just wanted to say happy birthday and dip. It's 8 p.m. now, and I've got another meeting at 10 and a flight to Paris at 6 tomorrow morning. I'm too wiped to play games with you." Sophia stood there, completely stunned. I was genuinely exhausted, my head pounding. Without saying another word, I broke free from her grip and left. Mia drove me home, and as I stepped out, I handed her the birthday present I had bought for Sophia. A car key. Sophia had wanted that car for ages, and I'd gone through a lot to get it for her. Mia looked surprised. "You giving this to me?" I nodded. "Yeah, take the key and grab it from the dealership yourself." "Thanks, bro." Her gratitude was real this time. "So you're breaking up with Sophia?" "Yeah, I'm calling off the engagement. If anyone asks, don't hide it. Sophia really crossed the line this time. You should have set her straight long ago." I smiled, waved her off, and went inside. After a quick shower, I forced myself to stay awake to finish the meeting. As soon as it was over, I crashed onto the bed without hesitation. The next morning, my secretary tried waking me, but I was still groggy. It felt like I hadn't slept a wink. Just a quick shut-eye, and my phone was flooded with unread messages and missed calls. Some folks were curious about what happened between me and Sophia. Others were gossiping about the breakup, and most were echoing Mia's thoughts that I should have put Sophia in her place. Everyone thought I was just trying to curb her spoiled behavior and that we'd patch things up later. In their eyes, I was head over heels for Sophia, loving her so much I lost all sense. Sophia was the girl I fell for back in high school. She was stunning and full of life, impossible to ignore. I wasn't immune, so I asked her out. "Sophia, will you be my girlfriend?" She looked at me like I was crazy and said, "Top student, I don't like goody two-shoes." Her rejection led me to some reckless teenage years. Smoking, drinking, skipping classes, clubbing, all to hang out with her. Until one day, she showed up with this smooth guy, arm in arm. "Let me introduce you to my boyfriend." It hit me then. It wasn't that she disliked good students, she just didn't like me. Sophia couldn't swim, but was as flirtatious as they come, juggling multiple boyfriends. Fast forward to our sophomore year in college, and we got engaged without even dating properly. It hit her hard. She cried bitterly, but snapped, "You did all this just to be with me? Don't you know I'll never love you?" I remember telling her, "It's cool, I don't need you to like me, I just need you to marry me." From sophomore year until now, Sophia had been my fiancée for 6 years, constantly flirting with other guys. Sometimes I'd clean up her messes, but each time I'd ask one thing. "Did you sleep with him?" She'd dodge the question, and I'd tell her, "If you did, you're free." Strangely, despite having tons of admirers, she never let anyone get close. I never figured out what she was holding on to. 3 days after my trip to Paris, I hadn't heard from Sophia at all. People kept telling me where she was. Turns out, the guys she said she'd marry were already dumped by her. She was hitting the bars daily with our crowd. Even Ava threatened to cut ties with her father. Plus, the car I gave Mia was bought back by Sophia for double the price. When I landed, I saw Sophia. Even with sunglasses, her face looked pale. She said, Dad wants to invite you over for dinner. Sorry, I replied. I've got stuff to handle and can't make it. I'll call Director Zhang to apologize personally. Sophia looked at me, then turned and left, saying something cold like, "Suit yourself." I didn't mind and drove straight home. It wasn't that I was ignoring her. I genuinely had things to do. My grandfather had called me, asking me to come home for dinner. He said it was just dinner, but I knew it was going to be a lecture about my fallout with Sophia. He was giving me an out, but I wasn't having it. "Grandpa, I want to break off the engagement with the Zhang family." His face darkened. "Sophia's a bit headstrong. Do what you want, but I won't approve of you ditching the engagement." "No, I'm serious. I want to call it off." He slammed the table. "Kneel down." I obediently knelt. "Do you know how much we'll lose if we break off the engagement with the Zhang family?" Of course I did. For 6 years, our alliance with them had been smooth, mutually beneficial. But separating now would peel off a layer. I smiled and said, "What if I can make up for that loss?" He calmed down, tapped his fingers on the table, and said, "We'll talk after you sort it out." After leaving the old house, I messaged my competitor, "Miss Kim, need a husband?" Ava was the golden girl of our generation. Everyone admired her. Her family always boasted, "Look at Ava, the perfect, wealthy beauty excelling in everything." She avoided spoiled rich kids. It wasn't until I took over the family business that I interacted with her. She was the golden child my parents always praised. Finally, I had my revenge. Last month, we both bid on a piece of land simultaneously. I won by a narrow margin, keeping my circle impressed. After messaging her, Ava didn't respond for hours. It wasn't until 11 p.m. that she finally replied with a simple question mark. Excited, I hugged my phone. I called her directly. "Miss Kim, you busy?" She chuckled politely. "What's up, Mr. Ethan?" I got straight to the point. "Have you thought about my earlier question?" Ava was silent for a moment, then said, "Husband." I took a deep breath. Did she just call me husband? Should I go along with it? As I hesitated, she added, "Are you trying to set me up with someone?" Miss Kim, I was speechless. It was just a question. Good thing I didn't blurt out something weird. So I said, "Basically, Miss Kim, you're at a marriageable age and I have a perfect match for you. Interested?" Dead silence. It was awkward, but I wasn't giving up. The next morning, I went straight to Ava's company. Seeing me, she frowned slightly, her eyes avoiding mine. "Need something, Mr. Ethan?" Was she pretending to forget? I wasn't going to let her off easily. Opportunity knocks once. Marrying me is a guaranteed win with no losses. Sign up now and enjoy an ultra-value bride package. Ava was speechless. She bit her lip and asked, "Are you serious? Did you think I was joking last night?" "No, I thought you were drunk." "All right then." I looked at her sincerely. "So, will you consider me?" Ava sized me up for a long time. "I heard you had a fallout with Sophia." "Seems legit, but if even she doesn't want you, why should I?" She didn't outright refuse, meaning there was room to negotiate. "For the Clearwater Bay project, I'll give you a 0.5% discount." Ava twirled a pen. 3%, taking advantage of the situation. I looked incredulous. 1%, 3%, 1.5%, no more. 3%. I was starting to get frustrated. "Don't push it. 2% max, deal?" I was speechless. Ava said, "It's not about the money. I just like helping others." She was a total gold digger. With things settled with Ava, I felt confident enough to negotiate with the Zhang family. I arranged to meet Sophia's dad, Mr. Carter. Unexpectedly, Sophia came along. I hadn't seen her in days, and she looked even more downcast. Before entering the meeting room, Sophia grabbed my arm. "Why didn't you call me?" "What?" "Our engagement is between us. If you wanted to discuss it, why didn't you talk to me?" I looked at Sophia quietly. Sometimes, I really envied her naivety. "You're mistaken. Our engagement has never been just between us. Sophia stared at me, her face pale. When we walked in, Chairman Zhang was already seated at the head of the table. We exchanged some polite greetings. He said kindly, "I know Sophia upset you. I brought her today. She's still young. If you have any complaints, feel free to speak up. I won't be biased." I smiled and said, "I invited you today to discuss the marriage between me and the Zhang family." Chairman Zhang, I intend to end this engagement. The relaxed atmosphere instantly froze. Sophia abruptly stood up. "I disagree." Chairman Zhang's face darkened. "Sit down, you brat." Sophia met her father's gaze and sneered. "What's wrong? Planning behind my back again? You forced me into this engagement and now you're backing out. What do I even mean to you?" Chairman Zhang slammed the table. "What do you want? You opposed our engagement and have been causing trouble for 6 years. How much embarrassment have you brought to both our families? If you don't want to cancel the engagement, then what exactly are you doing?" Sophia was stunned for a moment, then lowered her head. Chairman Zhang gave her a stern look. "Leave." She left, but not before grabbing my hand and running as if we were eloping. I was speechless. "Sophia, what are you doing?" She didn't say anything, but her grip tightened, leaving red marks on my arm. I pulled away forcefully, wincing in pain. "Can't you trim your claws?" It was like she snapped back to reality. She looked guiltily at the marks and cautiously asked, "Are you okay?" A knot formed in my stomach. I never expected Sophia to be the first obstacle in ending the engagement. Maybe Sophia could even help me, I thought, not expecting her to become the first roadblock. "Sophia, what exactly are you doing? Haven't you always wanted to cancel the engagement? Now that things are going your way, why are you fussing?" Sophia suddenly laughed, but it sounded more like she was about to cry. "Going my way? Does my opinion matter to you? Have you ever asked for my consent before making decisions?" I seemed to understand what she meant. "So you feel that me proposing the cancellation hurts your pride? No problem. You can propose it. I can even tell everyone you dumped me." I smiled and continued. "Actually, it doesn't have to be so complicated. Didn't you already announce you were marrying someone else? Breaking off the engagement now is perfectly reasonable." She said, "That's over." I asked, "What?" Sophia looked at me and said, "I never intended to marry anyone else." I was silent for a few seconds. "But you'll end up marrying someone else." I realized at her birthday party that the person she announced might not have been someone she truly wanted to marry, but sooner or later she'd get hitched. I wasn't one to sit back, so I had to take the initiative. In the end, Sophia and I split on bad terms. She left with a resentful remark, "Ethan, this time it's not up to you." Of course, it wasn't just up to me, it wasn't up to her either. This needed negotiation. Before meeting Chairman Zhang, I had already taken Ava to meet my grandfather. We had a meal together and chatted casually. We didn't say much. Those who understood, understood. That night, my grandfather relented. "I'm old and can't handle your affairs anymore. Do what you want." This time, I went straight to Chairman Zhang's office. In and out within an hour, the engagement was off. We agreed to announce the cancellation on our official websites at 8 a.m. The next day, Ava asked, "So, what exactly did you offer the Zhang family?" Ava no longer had her daytime aloofness and looked at me curiously. After leaving the Zhang Corporation, I called Ava, wanting to invite her to dinner. She told me to come over to her place directly. I was hesitant at first, then thought, since our relationship was changing, it wouldn't hurt to test the waters. Turns out, I overthought it. She just wasn't in the mood to go out. She didn't have any special plans, just had Aunt Zhang cook 2 pre-packaged meals and opened a bottle of wine. It was pretty chill. I said, "You're overthinking it. Am I someone who'd swallow my pride?" Ava tilted her head, looking like she wanted to hear more. I explained, "Actually, the Zhang family doesn't have much leverage over me. In these 6 years, no one was foolish. We were just mutually benefiting. The only thing is, Clearwater Bay. The Zhang family is the investor. If I break off the engagement, they'll pull their investment. If they do, that land would be stuck with me, breaking my capital chain. So I urgently need someone with funds, strength, and the willingness to be a big shot. I looked at her with sparkling eyes. Ava was speechless. Don't look at me like that. I was confused. You're making me feel like a fool. I was baffled. She said disdainfully, You're making me feel like a big fool. I was completely lost. How could that be? You're my savior. Ava sneered silently, looking incredulous. So I teased, Look, to repay your life-saving grace, I'm even offering myself to you. If you don't believe me, I can offer myself any time. Ava blushed and said, Stop being inappropriate. It was 9:30 p.m. We both took out our phones. We're announcing the news tomorrow. Tell me, would it be unkind if I shorted the Jang stock when the U.S. market opens? Ava let out a short laugh, ignoring me. Curious, I looked at her phone screen and hissed, You're being unkind. Ava looked up and said, Right back at you. I had a bad feeling. Whose stocks did you buy? I asked. Of course, the Zhang and the Carter families. I was speechless. The next day, the news of the broken engagement spread like wildfire. The internet exploded, and so did our social circle. Groups of people called and messaged me, overwhelmed by the situation. I posted a few words on social media. We've broken up. Please don't disturb. I was too busy to respond. There was also pressure from board members to appease them. Unexpectedly, Sophia barged into the conference room. My assistant looked helpless. She mouthed that she couldn't hold back. Sophia didn't look well. I could see the red veins in her eyes. Furious, I said, Please go to my office. We'll talk after the meeting. Sophia let out a cold laugh and bit her lip. Ethan, you're ruthless. Truly ruthless. You said you liked me, chased me all these years, insisted on marrying me. I slammed a folder on the table, cutting her off. Elise, please continue the meeting. Yes, Mr. Ethan. I glanced at Sophia and walked out of the conference room. She followed me into my office. Feeling embarrassed now, aren't you, Ethan? You brought all this on yourself. I never asked for anything from you, never forced you. It's you who kept pushing me. I looked at Sophia coldly. After she finished, I replied, Indeed, it's quite embarrassing. But it's not my reputation that's tarnished. It's your Carter family's. Sophia glared at me intensely, as if she wanted to pierce through me. I continued. Sophia, this isn't the first time you've trespassed into my conference room, but it'll be the last. If it happens again, I'll have security escort you out. We're all adults here. Adults have their own rules. Not every place is somewhere you can come and go as you please. Sophia seemed crushed, her face turning pale. She murmured, You said you liked me, Ethan. You can't do this. Seeing her like that, I felt a bit helpless. Sophia, can you get a grip? Yes, I said, I liked you, but when was that? The first time I told you I liked you was in high school. The last time was also in high school. We were 17 then. Now we're 26. Almost 10 years have passed. In 10 years, my interests, tastes, and style have all changed drastically. I've long forgotten what it felt like to like you 10 years ago. Besides, does the fact that I liked you even matter to you? Sophia staggered back 2 steps. So you haven't liked me for a long time? Yes, I haven't liked you for a long time. All these years, I've done so much, and you acted indifferent, as if it didn't matter. Even when I kissed others, you acted like you didn't see it and warned them not to spread the photos. I kept testing your limits, but you had no boundaries with me. As long as I didn't sleep with others, it was fine. As long as I didn't sleep with them. Everyone thinks you're madly in love with me, but only I know you don't love me at all. Sophia shouted, Why? Why do you say you love me when you want to and say you don't when you don't? Why do you decide to get engaged and then cancel it whenever you feel like it, Ethan? Who do you think you are? I was stunned and blurted out, Because I have the ability to do so now. At the same time, I realized something was off. Sophia, don't tell me you like me. She froze, wanting to refute but held back. Sophia? Who taught you to like someone this way? She seemed to see a glimmer of hope. I don't know how to like someone. I've been wrong all these years. I won't do this anymore. Let's not cancel the engagement. Okay. It was the first time she spoke so humbly, but it wasn't necessary. Sophia, I said, over the years, my criteria for choosing a partner have changed. When I was young, I liked someone beautiful and flamboyant. But now, I like someone who can stand shoulder to shoulder with me, someone we can mutually respect and understand. You're not suitable. Sophia never met my criteria for a partner, but the Zhang family did. I used to think if Sophia wanted to cause drama, so be it, as long as she didn't trouble me. But over the years, she proved to be trouble. Ava called me. Your ex-fiancé is still pestering you. I chuckled. Miss Kim, your info is spot on. Ava sneered. It's not that I'm well informed. It's that your ex-fiancé is making too big of a scene. I felt a headache coming on. She kept referring to her as my ex-fiancé. It sounded a bit sour, but I didn't think she was jealous. Ava and I are similar. If someone was causing a scene on her side, I wouldn't be happy either. I quickly promised. This is the last time. It won't happen again. Ava acknowledged with a hum. After hanging up, I told my assistant to inform the front desk that Sophia would need an appointment if she came in the future. After a hectic day, I finally appeased the board members. At the end of the workday, I unexpectedly got another call from Ava. Your front desk asked me to make an appointment. I was speechless, but that wasn't the main point. I was here. Ava didn't speak, so I said, please hand the phone to the receptionist. After sorting things out with Ava, I instructed my assistant, if Ava comes in the future, don't stop her. Let her come directly. Ava. My assistant looked astonished. I nodded, and she gave me a thumbs up silently. Ava arrived, not empty-handed. She brought me dinner. I was hungry, but 7 or 8 packets of ready-made meals were too much, so I tactfully said I couldn't eat that much. Ava was speechless. Can't I eat with you? So Ava and I rearranged a spot in the office. We ate while discussing the Clearwater Bay project. After all, she'd be holding my lifeline in the future, so I needed to be open with her. By the time we finished talking, we were full. I asked Ava, you didn't come all this way just to bring me dinner, did you? Ava raised an eyebrow. I've already met your grandfather. When are you planning to meet my parents with me? Her sudden words startled me so much that the water in my mouth got stuck. I couldn't swallow or spit it out and ended up coughing. Ava looked at me with dissatisfaction and said, you're not thinking of burning bridges after crossing them, are you? I suppressed my cough and hurriedly said, How? How could I? Ava's mood softened. She reached out and patted my back. Pathetic. After a while, I finally calmed down. I felt a bit helpless. Ava, to be honest, I don't have experience interacting successfully with elders. I shook my head and didn't say more. My parents died early, and I was raised by my grandfather, who was extremely profit-driven. He groomed me solely as an heir, so our relationship was always based on interests. If I harmed those interests, I got punished. Feelings didn't matter. It was all business. But Ava's parents were different because the one with whom I had a vested interest was Ava, not her parents. For a moment, I felt a bit melancholic, but Ava didn't mind. What's there to experience? Just cater to their preferences. My dad loves tea, and my mom loves beauty. I took a deep breath. When? Next weekend. All right, got it? Ava frowned at me. What's wrong? I asked. She sighed helplessly. Don't act like you're marching to your doom. My parents won't eat you. Besides, I'll help you smooth things over. Being with Ava was super comfortable. She understood boundaries and knew when to step forward or back, never making me feel offended. Plus, since being with her, I was making more and more money. Could you be my lucky charm? Ava laughed and said, your ability to attract wealth isn't bad either. Satisfied, I extended my hand. Pleasure working with you. Ava shook my hand warmly. Pleasure working with you. I hadn't seen Sophia for a long time. Just when I was about to forget her, she showed up looking disheveled. Lately, she'd been acting wild, her clothes getting more revealing, staying out at bars later and later. Every day, I saw her crazy nightlife on social media. I even got a few calls telling me Sophia wouldn't leave me alone and insisted I go talk to her, asking me to consider our past. Most of these people I blocked. Gradually, things quieted down. I didn't expect her to show up at my doorstep. She stood there holding a bottle of wine, looking lifeless. I pretended not to see her and was about to open the door when Sophia grabbed my hand. I whispered sternly, "Sophia, let go." Her hand was trembling. I hesitated, then she let go. I breathed a sigh of relief. As I was closing the door, Sophia spoke, "I know everything." I was stunned. "What?" She looked up at me, tears welling in her eyes. "My dad told me, if it weren't for you choosing to get engaged to me back then, he would have brought his illegitimate son home long ago." She raised her arm to cover her eyes. "He actually has an illegitimate son, just 2 years younger than me, and I never knew. The day after we canceled the engagement, he let him into the company, and I didn't know. Not long ago, he transferred 2% of the shares to him, and I still didn't know. Until yesterday, he brought him home and said, 'That's my brother. Get along with him.' How is that possible? Is he crazy?" She added, "If it weren't for you, he wouldn't have let his daughter inherit the Zhang family's assets at all. He would have brought back his illegitimate son long ago." Sophia lowered her arm, her eyes red. "Ethan, am I a complete failure?" I replied calmly, "Yes, a complete failure." Sophia gave a bleak smile. "You really hate me. You won't even give me a bit of comfort." She was drunk. I didn't want to argue with her. Sophia took 2 steps back and leaned against the wall. I always seemed to be the one left behind. When I was young, I rebelled against him, went against him. I thought that as long as I didn't do what he said, I could make him uncomfortable. I thought indulging myself was a punishment for him, but he had already given up on me. And you, Sophia, looked at me, half crying, half laughing. I was still trying to find ways to make you value me more, but you haven't liked me for a long time. I'm the only one spinning in circles while you all moved forward. You all moved forward, and I'm the only one left behind. You've all abandoned me. None of you want me. No one waited for me. None of you waited." She kept repeating similar words, lost in her emotions. I called her best friend. Not long after, she arrived in a sports car looking at me. She sighed. "What kind of ill-fated relationship do you two have?" I smiled without saying anything. "Can't you give her another chance?" I shook my head. "You already called it an ill-fated relationship." She gritted her teeth and angrily helped Sophia up. I knew she'd regret it. Serves her right. Sophia's situation made me momentarily lament my youth, but it didn't affect me much. Instead, dealing with Ava's parents was a challenge. Ava's mother loved beauty, but buying cosmetics or skincare was out of the question. So I finally chose a diamond necklace. A woman loves diamonds forever. As for Ava's father, the gift had to be tea leaves. I had a few options and planned to have my grandfather help me decide. But after he looked them over, he said, "Penny wise, pound foolish." I was helpless. They were already expensive enough. Grandpa snorted. "Wait." After a while, he took out a cake of tea. "Take this." Looking at the simple packaging, I said, "Are you trying to get me thrown out?" Grandpa rolled his eyes. "Can't you recognize a treasure when you see one? This one is worth 10 of what you're holding." "Really? Get out." In the end, I took it. After all, why not? Before I left, Grandpa reminded me, "When you go to someone else's house, speak nicely, listen to the elders, don't argue." I was speechless. I wanted to retort, "When have I ever argued?" But that would seem like arguing. So I could only shut up, feeling aggrieved. Soon, it was the weekend. I had the driver take me to pick up Ava. On the way, I was like a mute. The car was suffocatingly quiet. Suddenly, Ava held my hand. "What are you doing?" "Giving you some warmth, in case you freak out before we get there." "If I say I'm not nervous, would you believe me?" She shook her head. I didn't say anything. All right, maybe a little nervous. So I directly put my arm around her shoulders. "This is what warmth feels like." She asked, "Are you sure you're not trying to take advantage of me?" I sneered. "Am I supposed to?" She pursed her lips and nodded. The atmosphere at the Zhang family was more harmonious than I expected. Ava's father cooked, and the food was delicious. Ava's mother focused on being beautiful, but was stunning, having been an actress. They loved my gifts, especially Ava's mother, who immediately wore the necklace. The conversation afterward was a bit puzzling. Ava's father asked, "When are you planning to get married?" Ava looked at me. "When are you planning to marry me?" I really wanted to scold her, thinking she was trying to throw me under the bus. So I said, "I can do it any time. It's up to Ava. I'll follow her lead." Ava looked at me. I raised my eyebrows at her. She then said, "My idea is to get the marriage certificate at the end of the month and hold the wedding at the end of the year." I was dumbfounded. Ava's mother was thrilled, excitedly discussing wedding plans with us. I felt confused until we left. Sure enough, talking about money was easier. As I was leaving, she said seriously, "Let me know when you've made up your mind." "Made up my mind about what?" Ava said, "Get the marriage certificate at the end of the month, wedding at the end of the year. In business, we need to add some insurance to our cooperation." Isn't marriage a natural thing? Lying in bed that night, I began to think about marriage, weighing the pros and cons, analyzing gains and losses, and found myself in a dilemma. But after drinking a glass of water, I had an epiphany. Ava seemed to have given me a false proposition. I originally intended to marry her. Does it matter whether it's sooner or later? Obviously not. So I sent her a message. "Ava, I've thought it over." Ava replied with a question mark. I ignored her and went straight to sleep. The next day, I told her, "Let's get married." Ava looked at me speechlessly and asked, "Are you sure?" I was puzzled. Weren't we already planning to get married? After saying that, I immediately signed a check for $200 million and handed it to her. Ava nodded, sincerely saying, "Impressive as always, Mr. Ethan." It wasn't until years later, after our daughter was born, that Ava told me, "Back then, I thought you'd give me a romantic proposal. But no, impressive as always, Mr. Ethan just handed me a check. No frills. So you agreed?" "Yes, making money is nothing to be ashamed of." Ava and I scheduled our marriage registration for 3 days later because on that day, Ava would officially invest in Clearwater Bay. When we announced our marriage certificate, it would be a win-win. Today, someone from the Zhang family was coming over to discuss our future collaboration. What I didn't expect was that the person who came was Sophia. Surprised for a second, I quickly stood up to shake her hand. "President Zhang? Pleasure to meet you." Sophia looked at me, gripping my hand tightly for several seconds before letting go. "President Ethan, pleasure to meet you." Without much small talk, we got straight to business. What surprised me was that Sophia didn't propose any conditions. All the contracts were in line with previous agreements. She said, "Rest assured, President Ethan, our personal matters won't affect the collaboration between our families." I wasn't sure if Sophia had done something behind the scenes, but it didn't matter. After all, only a fool wouldn't take advantage of a good deal. So we happily signed the contracts. "President Ethan, would you like to have a meal together?" I nodded and said, "Of course. Since Sophia decided to get involved in the company's affairs, we'd have plenty of opportunities to interact in the future. After all, it's wise to leave room for future encounters." Sophia chose a place I often visited, though it was my first time going there with her. She ordered dishes I mostly liked, but I pretended not to notice. I raised my glass. "Thank you for your hospitality today, President Zhang. I hope we have a pleasant cooperation in the future." Sophia looked at me with a bitter smile. "Do we need to be so distant? Now that we're no longer engaged, can't we at least be friends? The more friends, the better. I put down my glass and said, "Of course we can." Sophia was stunned. Her expression didn't look good. "Do you really have no feelings for me at all?" I felt a headache coming on. Having been through so many relationships, how did I not notice she was a hopeless romantic? "Sophia, since you're joining the company, focus on your work. Don't think about unnecessary things." Sophia stared at me without blinking. "If I do well, can you give me another chance?" I was a bit puzzled. What chance? "Ethan, I won't give up on you." I felt conflicted. How should I tactfully tell her that I was about to get married? "Sophia, you can do anything you want, but not for me. I'm not responsible for someone else's life choices." She said, "So all these years, you've never advised me. Whatever I wanted to do was my own business and had nothing to do with you. Once I did something that crossed your bottom line, you kicked me away, right?" Sophia's emotions became agitated. I looked at her and said, "So are you blaming me?" Her eyes showed panic. "That's not what I meant." I rubbed my temples. "Sophia, I've carved my own path through hard work and setbacks. I can't even be sure that the road I'm on is the right one. Why should I plan your life for you? Again, you can do anything you want, but don't involve me. I'm not responsible for your life choices." I got up to leave. Sophia reached out to stop me. At that moment, the door to the private room was pushed open. Ava walked in. "I heard from the manager you were here." I stepped forward and put my arm around her shoulder, saying, "Let me introduce you. This is Ava, my wife." Ignoring Sophia's pale face after her stunned reaction, I pulled Ava away. "What? Using me? What? Aren't you? Am I? Has the law recognized it? Then can I exercise my husband's rights in advance?" Ava chuckled softly and held my hand. "Of course you can, hubby." It seemed I had greatly upset Sophia. She grabbed me regardless of the occasion. "Don't do this, Ethan. Don't treat me like this. You're lying to me." "Right, you're taking revenge on me, aren't you?" Her eyes were full of pleading as she looked at me. Before I could react, Ava slapped her and said, "Miss Carter, please have some self-respect." Sophia covered her face, her eyes filled with rage. She growled, "Get lost. Give Ethan back to me." Ava smiled slightly and said, "Miss Carter, you and Ethan have already canceled your engagement." She shouted, "This is between Ethan and me. It has nothing to do with you." With that, she quickly raised her hand to hit Ava. But just as she was about to make contact, I grabbed her hand, pulled forcefully, and pushed her to the ground. "Are you okay?" I asked, looking at Ava with concern. Sophia, who had been staring at me, now had the light in her eyes extinguished. I sneered at Sophia and said, "Sophia, this is really meaningless. Whether you're truly regretful or not, we've already canceled our engagement. So please swallow your emotions, even if it hurts, and stop bothering me." Ava and I went down to the underground parking lot. Before getting into the car, she suddenly pulled me. "What's wrong?" She looked at me with a smile in her eyes. "President Ethan, you're pretty cool. I found that I kind of like you." I raised an eyebrow. "Just a little," Ava said. Then a bit more. I lifted my hand to smooth her hair and said, "Approved by President Ethan. We have a partnership. We're going to get married. We might even spend a lifetime together." I didn't mind developing feelings with Ava. 2 days later, Ava and I got up early and rushed to the Civil Affairs Bureau. Our assistant had already taken a number for us. Shoulder to shoulder, head to head, we took a registration photo. My heartbeat accelerated at that moment. We obtained our marriage certificate as quickly as possible and then hurried back to the company. Ava officially invested her funds. Then our official website posted our partnership and marriage certificate. "Mr. Ethan, happy newlywed. Looking forward to our cooperation. Mrs. Ethan, happy newlywed. Looking forward to our collaboration." After registering our marriage, Ava and I moved in together. I bought a property very close to both our workplaces. We were highly compatible, both in work and in life. This made my life gradually more fulfilling and triumphant. I began to expand my business territory, venturing into any profitable industry without hesitation. After a strong alliance, one becomes bold gradually. Ava and I were dubbed the money-making couple. I gladly accepted this title. I hadn't followed news about Sophia for a long time. When I heard about her again, she had already been sent abroad. This made me quite curious. Her father was indeed very disappointed in her. No matter what, she was the daughter he had loved most since childhood. His grooming of an illegitimate son wasn't because he preferred sons over daughters, but because he wanted Sophia to get back on the right path. The Zhang family wasn't a feudal household. There was no throne to inherit. So there was never any talk of abandonment, especially since Sophia had now started doing proper work. So what exactly happened that made them send her abroad? I asked Ava. She hesitantly explained, she wanted to fight me to the death. Fight to the death? How? Sophia's idea was simple: steal business. She wanted to snatch it aggressively, regardless of cost or profit, but she had no say in the company. As soon as she issued the orders, her dad found out, and they had a heated argument. Sophia threatened that she wouldn't let Ava have peace. Such willfulness made her father completely disappointed. To prevent her from causing trouble, he simply sent her abroad. Why didn't you tell me? She glanced at me. Tell you what, that your ex-girlfriend is still hung up on you? Are you that idle? Of course I'm not idle. I'm very busy. I have to manage business and prepare for the year-end wedding. My plan was to outsource it and accept various sponsorships. When Ava heard this, she pouted and came over to kiss me. In the end, I had no choice but to reluctantly, helplessly, and unwillingly compromise. Later, that wedding was arranged by me to be very grand. Like a dream, Sophia also came. She was dressed elaborately, as if to steal the groom, but she did nothing, sitting quietly and leaving quietly. Afterward, Ava tiptoed and kissed me. Mr. Ethan, please take care of me for the rest of our lives.